into PEC Match Point, your premier destination for news around the PEC. We've got a packed show. I'm Michael Fisher, so make sure you stick around. We've got highlights, reactions. We're going to hear from a director of one of the best teams in the PEC. It's all coming up on your premier FBS league in the country, the Power Esports Conference. Of course, PEC Match Point brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. Big shout out to them. Let's take a look what we got on the docket for the show today. It's a good one. We're going to go around the PEC, give you all the highlights you need to know from week 4. We're going to go inside the PEC. John Price, director of Ohio State, going to join us. The Hawaii Invitational turned into the PEC Invitational. We'll tell you more about that, and we'll look ahead to week 5. But let's start off with PEC Rocket League. Baylor looking to remain undefeated. Their latest challenger, the runners-up from last year, Michigan State. The Spartans have been on a hot streak lately. They look to be that first team to knock Baylor down a peg. However, Baylor showed no signs of letting up. The Bears jumped out early to a 2-0 lead in the series behind their very, very talented team. But much like they've done all season, Baylor's played this bend but don't break style. The Spartans got game 3 into overtime, but with a chance to extend the series, Baylor slammed that door shut.
Contact to get it over to Neal. Gets it over Andy. Hawks are called into play now. Flip reset. Gets it over one. He's got a pre-jump and almost finds its way in. That one is railed off the post. Andy looking to try and regroup for Baylor. Pops it high off more of his cars, and Neal is there looking for the double tap. Can't quite read it. Follow-up is there. And it's Neal with the golden goal to sweep Michigan State.
Just barely missing that hit right there, and that sealed the deal for Michigan.
Look out, Baylor. We might have a new hottest team in Rocket League, though, because Minnesota is absolutely killing it right now. The Gophers picked up their second straight win. They had an epic 3-2 series with Utah going the distance. The team split the first 2 games. Utah with 3 goals from Kelpie, won game 3 5-1, but the Gophers defense came alive. They won 2-1, 2-1 to come back and win the series. It was an amazing team effort for Minnesota. All 3 players scored at least 4 goals. Meanwhile, for the Utes, Kelpie had 5, but it wasn't enough to shut down this red-hot team. Boise State picked up their 9th win of the year, taking down Kansas 3-0. A close game 1 where Boise State only held on to win 2-1, but from there the Broncos offense roared to life. They beat the Jayhawks 6-2, 7-2 to finish the sweep and get the series. Dirt, though, led the way for the Broncos with 6 goals. A very balanced attack. All 3 players for Boise State scored at least 4 times. For the Jayhawks, Meave put in 3 goals of their own, but it wasn't enough to stop Boise State. Syracuse won their 7th game of the year with a sweep over Nebraska, but don't let this scoreline fool you. This series was dead close. Game 1 saw Syracuse barely survive 4-3. They blew out the Cornhuskers 6-0 in Game 2, but once again, they got pushed to the brink. They had to win Game 3 5-4 to pick up the sweep. Lesser led the way for the Orange with 8 goals, outscored the entire Nebraska team while promising at a team-high 3 for Nebraska. We take a look at how the week went in PEC Rocket League. Of course, mostly sweeps. Baylor, Boise State, Syracuse, kind of as we would expect. But look out for Minnesota there at 3-2. I like this team. They're red hot. We take a look at the standings. It's the usual suspects. Baylor and Boise State 1-2. Syracuse actually jumping over Michigan State with that win, with the Spartans losing to Baylor. And yes, I know they're down there at the bottom of the standings, but watch out for Minnesota at 2-9. They're playing some of the best Rocket League in the PEC. I can't wait to see what this squad does going forward. Moving on into Overwatch, Boise State and Kansas met. It was a rematch of one of the bigger games from the PEC fall. These 2 teams traded blows in an epic 5-game series. Saw the Jayhawks come out on top, but this time Boise State wanted no part in that. The Broncos jumped on them early, winning the first 2 games with ease, including a map 2 where the Broncos team suffered only 7 deaths combined. Up 2-0 with a chance to get revenge on the Jayhawks for the last fall loss. Boise State made sure this series wasn't going longer than 3 games.
This was to keep the momentum going forward. They're fighting like they mean it, and they're on victory's door.
Ooh, and Kansas wants to avoid this at all costs. Seeing potential going to, clear being low, having to back off, create a little bit of extra space. Broncos are still holding. Strider going for the ultimate, creating a space with a knockout. 3, I think, for Maxwell there at the end.
Yeah.
The Broncos knock this out here. Boise State taking the...
Syracuse, they're looking to regroup. They had a week off after a loss to first place Ohio State a couple weeks ago, and they roared back. They took down Nebraska 3-0. The Orange had 2 players, Mac Club and Lunar, both drop over 70 kills. They got their 7th win of the year. They remain in that great spot in the standings with only 2 losses. For the Cornhuskers, it's a rough loss. They did have some bright spots. Juno Pup and Swimmer Dude both had very strong series, but this Syracuse team looks like a real deal. They weren't quite able to get it done. The Utes, they took on Minnesota. They have done everything they need to in order to keep pace with Boise State in the standings. These two teams are neck and neck, and the Utes picked up a 3-0 sweep over Minnesota. No Sam 4-0-5-5 led the way, a 64-7 scoreline. The top 4 teams just separated by the thinnest margins. For Minnesota, what's his name? Had a good series, 22-19, but not enough to take down the mighty Utes. We take a look at how the week went overall in the PEC. Sweeps across the board from those 3 top teams. Of course, Ohio State, the number 1 seed, they were on a bye, but 3-0 for Boise, 3-0 for Utah, and 3-0 for Syracuse. Moving on to the standings. Again, Ohio State, Boise State, Utah, Syracuse, 1 through 4, and it is incredibly close between these teams. Boise State and Utah, it is down to our 6th tiebreaker to figure out who has the number 2 seed right now. So this has been an absolutely fantastic season so far for PEC Overwatch. I can't wait till we get some more of the bigger games. Moving on into Valorant, Boise State picked up their PEC Valorant leading 12th win of the year. They took down Kansas 2-0. The Broncos looking really hot right now. They've dropped only 1 round so far in 5 games in the spring, and they're looking like a top threat. They took down the Jayhawks 13-6, 13-5. 3 Broncos posting KDs over 1.2 for the Jayhawks. Unfortunately, they ran into a buzzsaw on one of the best teams in the PEC. 6-Shot, though, had a strong series for the Jayhawks with 31 kills. Defending champs Michigan State, they're looking to build on that season-defining win over Ohio State last week as they just try and stay a game ahead of a surging Utah team, and they did just that, facing a Baylor squad that has given teams fits at times this year. Michigan State held on. They made quick work of the Bears with a 2-0 sweep for Baylor. Again, they've had some bright spots. They've taken rounds off of these top teams, haven't been able to quite seal the deal. Look out for them to maybe play spoiler later on in the year. And speaking of the Utes, they have been quietly keeping pace with some of the best teams in the PEC, and they had another strong performance this week against an upstart Minnesota squad. Game 1 was back and forth. The Utes held on to win 13-11, a 28-kill performance from on stage leading the way for the Gophers. Henry had 20 kills, but it wasn't enough. And in Game 2, the Utes found themselves with a bit more of a cushion, leading 12-7, and a chance to secure their 8th win of the year, and they delivered on it.
Intentional drift to just see some who sprays down D1. Superman, though, able to get the trade, but falls to Radiohead Enjoyer in exchange. Tenzin pulling out the Hunter's Fury is able to hit Lolliot, but Ashton and Onstage both getting 1, and Tenzin alive alone with a Sheriff. Ashton spraying down, though, to get victory for Utah, 13-8. Woo!
What a game, and what a...
Syracuse, they made waves a couple weeks ago. They were one of only the 2 teams to take a round off of Ohio State a couple weeks ago. Coming off a bye, they look even better than they did before. The Orange nabbed their 4th win of the year. They beat Nebraska, a 2-0 sweep, 13-7, 13-1, your final scores there. All 5 players from Syracuse posted positive KDs in the win, with Drago leading the way with 41. For Nebraska, Z Merlin, great series, 29 kills in the loss. Again, Nebraska, they've given teams fits at times. You can see here they got it to 13-7, but just not quite enough. We take a look at how Valorant played out this week in the PEC. Sweeps across the board, but some of these games a little bit closer than you would expect from just those score lines. But Michigan State, Utah, Syracuse, and Boise State all picking up wins, of course. But Ohio State, who we're going to see in the standings here, is just right behind them. Was on a bye. We take a look at those Valorant standings again. Boise State at 12-1. Ohio State right behind them. They've got a couple games to make up in the standings just to play. Michigan State at 9-3. Look out for Utah at 8-4. And don't sleep on this Syracuse squad. I know they're 4-7, but they've made some massive plays. Again, they took a game off of Ohio State. It was a crazy 18-16 overtime game. So this might all of a sudden be a 5-team race for that Valorant championship as we head into the rest of the spring season. Wrapping things up with PEC Smash, Nebraska and Syracuse did not disappoint. A pair of top 4 teams met up. It was an epic 3-game series. The Cornhuskers, they started off strong. They won Game 1, 13-8. All 3 of their first 3 players won. They locked up the series. Game 2 saw Idaho Bears and Super 6-7, 3-3 meet up. In Match 4, the Huskers were leading 9-8, but Idaho Bears pull off a 4-2 win to even up that series. And then Game 3, once again, Nebraska rode 3 straight match wins to a 13-7 victory, their 9th of the year as they won that series 2-1. Boise State Smash, we talked about this last week. They all of a sudden are a serious threat for maybe moving up the standings. They took down the Jayhawks 2-0, but this series was so close despite the sweep. Game 1 saw Sarmies pick up a 4-0 win over Postmortal in Match 4 to get the 12-10 win for the Broncos. And then in Game 2, Mata had to answer the call not once but twice. He wins Match 4 to force the tiebreaker, and he takes on Mander in that tiebreaker as Boise State looked to win their 2nd straight game in a row.
absolute pain for Mata, but continues to land a good combo, bringing the charge up to 84. Continues to toss him in the air. It's so close, 93 to 96. It continues building. Mata is looking to get every piece of damage they possibly can. Charizard able to block a little bit with
goes
the
for
shield.
the kick, but it's
Continues
caught.
to apply damage, knocks him off the stage, and he wins the recovery. And the Broncos take the win.
Michigan State Spartans, they had their match against Baylor rescheduled, so those two teams did not face off this week. We take a look at how Smash went overall. Again, couple of big series between some of these teams. Boise State with that 2-0 win over Kansas. Look out for them. And then Nebraska establishing themselves as maybe that just point-blank number 2 team as they took down Syracuse. We take a look at the standings right now. Again, Michigan State had to reschedule theirs, so they're still at 10-0. Nebraska, Minnesota, Syracuse, and all of a sudden, watch out for Boise State. This squad getting hot at the right time. That'll do it for the first half of the PEC Match Point, but you don't want to go anywhere. We're going to have John Price, director of Ohio State, joining us to talk about the Buckeyes. They look strong in Overwatch and Valorant. Can't wait to hear from him. Plus, what happened at the Hawaii Invitational that turned into the PEC Invitational? It's all coming up on PEC Match Point.
Since you guys have been in here, some things have changed. We've updated this place to be in its final form. New cabinets, new counters, all sorts of new stuff in here. This has turned into a place that wouldn't look out of place at an SEC or Big Ten football facility, and Dairy West has allowed us to have it here. We've taken a holistic approach to our player nutrition, and we're really thankful that Dairy West has made sure that our fueling station is the best in college esports and really at industry standard for any college athletic department.
How's it look so far? Comfortable?
Yes. Times and places all in who you share them with. Joy.
I going in.
Who you share it with.
This is a great use of your rollback.
Who you share it with.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Now earn up to 4 times the rewards with the ICCU Premier Rewards Visa credit card. It's the credit card from the credit union you love.
Scott Matlock, underrated recruit, has built himself into one of the best defensive players in the Mountain West.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Would you see every setback as a catalyst to keep going? This is the innovator's mindset, because innovation demands daring. Is finding thousands of ways that don't work, and the one that changes everything. It's when your unrelenting spirit sees the world's needs and says, I will create something better. So, what will you do? Will you let your genius run wild? Give yourself the space to be great. Set your sights on something even bigger, because we know changing the world doesn't happen by chance. It comes out of the blue.
Welcome back into PEC Match Point. It's time to go inside the PEC, but if you, of course, want more from the Power Esports Conference, make sure to head over to the official website, pec.leagueos.gg. We've got player profiles, all the stats you could hope for, everything you need to stay up to date on the PEC. Well, joining me now is John Price, director of Ohio State. The Buckeyes looking really strong in a couple of titles. And John, glad to have you on the show. You guys are coming off a bye. What's the vibe like halfway through the spring season right now?
Hey, always a pleasure to be here, Fish. The vibe is good. The vibe is good. All of our teams, I think, are really sinking in, getting ready for this last half of the spring split, and of course, getting that road to Vegas. So overall, I'm very happy with where we are, and the teams seem to be excited to wrap things up in this regular season.
And you mentioned the sort of that push to Vegas, and I'm curious, we got to sell the drama here on PEC Match Point. We're always breaking down where the tiebreakers stand. Are you really looking at that? Is that something where you're like, all right, we need to make sure we win this game, and we need to make sure maybe we win a Valorant map 13-3 to help this tiebreaker? And are you worrying about that, or is it really, we know we can beat anybody. Yes, we want the 1 seed or a better seed, but we don't really care at the end of the day. As long as we win, we know we're preparing ourselves the best we can.
Great question. No, but this is something we definitely consider and think about. But I think it's definitely more of let's get in there, play our best game possible, improve as we always do after every match, regardless of win or lose. That's more of the mentality. But I'd be lying if I said we don't consider that and think a little bit about doing some strategery for the seeding for the actual tournament and everything else.
I'm glad I'm not just selling it. I'm glad you admitted that for us. Now let's move on to Overwatch, because it's unprecedented what happened with the game, right? Usually you get a patch in something like Valorant, you get some nerfs, you get some buffs. Maybe you get a brand new hero. We got 5 brand new heroes in Overwatch. They dropped last week, as we covered on the show. They're not legal until next week for the PEC, but I'm sure your team, the top-ranked Overwatch team, by the way, has been messing around. I know you said before we started the show, one of your players, top 10 in hours on Jetpack Cat so far in North America. Just give us a little peek under the hood. What does Ohio State think these brand new 5 heroes that are legal in PEC play next week are going to do to the meta? And how do you feel about your squad that was #1 before everything kind of got flipped on its head?
I'm feeling very confident. Lau, our flying cat player, best way to talk about it, reminds me of Yumi in more ways than one from League of Legends. I know that's never a fun thing to throw out there. I don't think it's that oppressive, but it is definitely going to cause some, I think, changes, especially whenever they do make cat legal for competitive play specifically. Overall, though, I think these additional heroes are just going to provide more choices for some of these different, for the current meta, unless breaking the meta itself. Like, there hasn't been anything, at least we've seen, or that I'm willing to talk about on this show, coming yet. But overall, like, these are characters that are really going to help add more depth, and that's always a good thing when it comes to any type of game, especially one like Overwatch.
And speaking of your Overwatch squad, right, they're #1, Valorant's #2, but just in general, right, we talked about Vegas, right? It does change because it's on a LAN. I know your teams had experience last year, and we talked about in the fall that you guys had better performances on LAN than maybe your record indicated. But how do you go about reminding players or preparing kids who maybe weren't here last year about the differences for LAN so that your squads who maybe come in as title favorites all of a sudden aren't thrown off? How do you prepare your teams for that LAN experience we're going to have in Vegas?
Well, I think one of the big parts of it is you need to get them used to just playing on setups that aren't their own. So, of course, we play in person many of our different matches, and, of course, we try to go to LANs outside of our big LAN at PEC, of course, as well, to get them that necessary experience. Because at the end of the day, our space gets pretty busy and gets loud, so that's another added benefit. But you have to give them a chance to really see what it's like and to get them off of their home setups, because you're just not always going to have those. And success really does come when you're able to be prepared for those unexpected situations, whether it be you're using a mouse you've never seen before, whether it be you can't get your resolution right on your monitor. It's better to practice and be aware of those situations that could happen than to be surprised on the day of the LAN itself. So those are a few things we're doing, but overall, I think they're prepared, they're ready to go, and we have a lot of veterans that are going to be going to the LAN this year.
Hey, that always helps if somebody can kind of guide those new players. And you spoke about your space and it getting loud, and I love asking all the different directors we have on the show. Just take a step back, and what's the general sort of atmosphere when it comes to Ohio State esports on campus, right? If I walk student and asked about Ohio State esports. Do you have an idea what that vibe sort of feels like? I mean, you've got two squads that maybe can win a national championship. That's got to mean a lot. So do you know kind of what that outside view of your program is?
It's very positive, right? I always like to equate it to as very much like a rising tide sort of aspect. It's not like a big wave of momentum, but we're having a lot of great vibes here. I guess I can use that word, right? I'm not too old. But a lot of good vibes in just the overall community around esports here on campus, and just so many amazing things happening. In addition to how well our squad is playing on multiple levels in both Valorant, Overwatch, and Rocket League and Smash as well. I think very much that when we're there in person, despite where we are right now in the rankings, things will change. Lands are a different beast entirely, just as we were talking about. And so I'm really, a lot of my players are very hungry just to get there in person so they can show our record is not indicative of how skilled we are.
Well, I think, again, you said it. There's a couple squads that I already know about, and maybe there's a couple I'm sleeping on. I wish you guys the best luck rest of the season. I know we're going to see you down in Vegas, and you're going to make some noise, so can't wait to see what your squads have in store, and best of luck to you guys rest going forward.
Thanks, Fish. We're looking forward to seeing y'all there as well.
And John Price, director of Ohio State. Again, those squads looking really good. Valorant, as he mentioned, Overwatch. And I know he said in the fall, their Smash team came in and kind of took 3 or 4 spots up in the standings going forward. So I look out for them. Speaking of the PEC, though, the PEC took over the Hawaii Invitational this past weekend as the top 4 squads from PEC Rocket League did a fantastic job. Baylor, Boise State, Michigan State, and Syracuse all absolutely having dominant performances as they made this event their own. It was a 6-team tournament, but quickly became a 4-team PEC showdown. As in group play, the PEC squads finished 1 through 4, but maybe the most notable part of all that, Boise State took down Baylor 3-2 in group play. So the Broncos were the ones who grabbed the 1 seed with a perfect 5-0 record. Baylor right behind them at 4-1. Michigan State 3-2, and then Syracuse at 2-3 kind of rounded out that top 4. Some notable scores from group play from the PEC squads. Boise State taking out Michigan State 3-1. Michigan State barely squeaking past Syracuse 3-2, and perhaps maybe even more impressive, Syracuse barely squeezing past Baylor Baylor barely squeezing past Syracuse, 3-2, but the Orange doing a great job. From there, we went to the elimination stage. Boise State and Baylor had the byes as the top 2 seed, but the PEC dominance it continued. Syracuse and Michigan State both won their quarterfinal games over Hawaii and Grand Canyon respectively, but a collision course between Boise State and Baylor just proved to be inevitable. Boise State took down Syracuse 4-1, and Baylor took down Michigan State 4-0. From there, the 7-game grand finals were absolutely amazing. The teams split the first 4 games. Boise State won game number 1. Baylor won games 2 and 3 before Boise State evened up the series with a 2-1 win in game 4. Baylor, though, they came alive in game 5. They picked up a 5-1 win to put the series on match point. And as we've seen time and time again from these squads, they once again had a 1-goal game. This time it went into overtime with Baylor looking to shut the door and Boise State trying to force a game 7.
Needs to blink. It's a staring contest. Nobody blinking. Everyone on the edge of the seat. Wide open.
It's open!
Side, and that's it! Sikkim Bears! Baylor takes the victory, and a new school etched into the surfboard at HEI 2026. Baylor University.
Absolutely massive job by Baylor to pick up the W, but again, these 2 teams, Boise State and Baylor, have had so many epic series. You see there, this is how the bracket stage went down. And again, it came the PEC Esports Invitational very quickly. Boise State, Syracuse, Baylor, Michigan State, all in your top 4. Fantastic job all around. Well, that'll do it for Inside the PEC, but don't go anywhere yet. We've still got to look ahead to Week 5. We've got some massive matchups, especially in Overwatch and Smash. Don't go anywhere. We've got more PEC Match Point coming up after this.
Now we're earn up to 4 times the rewards with the ICCU Premier Rewards Visa credit card. It's the credit card from the credit union you love.
Scott Matlock, underrated recruit, has built himself into one of the best defensive players in the Mountain West.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Would you see every setback as a catalyst to keep going? This is the innovator's mindset, because innovation demands daring. Is finding thousands of ways that don't work, and the one that changes everything. It's when your unrelenting spirit sees the world's needs and says, I will create something better. So, what will you do? Will you let your genius run wild? Give yourself the space to be great? Set your sights on something even bigger, because we know changing the world doesn't happen by chance. It comes out of the blue.
How's it look so far? Comfortable?
Yes. Times and places all in who you share them with. Joy.
I got in.
Who you share it with.
This is a great use of your home equity.
Who you share it with.
Since you guys have been in here, some things have changed. We've updated this place to be in its final form. New cabinets, new counters, all sorts of new stuff in here. This has turned into a place that wouldn't look out of place at an SEC or Big Ten football facility, and Dairy West has allowed us to have it here. We've taken a holistic approach to our player nutrition, and we're really thankful that Dairy West has made sure that our fueling station is the best in college esports and really at industry standard for any college athletic department.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Match Point. Big shout out to John Price, Director of Ohio State, for joining us there. But we're halfway through the season, and it's time to look ahead to what's coming up this week in the PEC as we start with Rocket League. Baylor, they're at a perfect 12-0. They're looking to remain in the driver's seat. They get a Kansas squad. Should be a fun little Big 12 battle between these two schools. The Bears, they've looked a little mortal recently. Boise State and Michigan State have slowed them down, and we talked about off the PEC, Boise State even handed them a loss, but it doesn't count in our standings. The Bears looking to remain undefeated and carry that into March and beyond. For Kansas, they've had an up-and-down season, an upset. We just had shockwave through the PEC, but maybe even taking a game or two off Baylor shows you have the skills to compete for a title. Boise State, they face off one of the hottest teams in the PEC that's not named Baylor. They get a Minnesota squad fresh off their second straight win. The Gophers have been rising up the standings. They've been playing some of the best, if not the best, Rocket League lately in the entire PEC. Now they get their chance to test it against one of the best squads so far. Boise State, they're not looking to do all they can to keep up with Baylor. They're hoping to build some space between them and third place Michigan State. Nebraska and Ohio State may meet up in a Big Ten match that should be a great little series between teams that are looking to kind of find that extra oomph as the spring season winds down. Both these teams, they've looked strong at times, had some setbacks, and a win for either squad kind of does wonders heading into that confidence, giving you some more of that maybe knowledge that you can do in the second half of the season what you do against one of these squads. So watch out for this one. Syracuse and Utah, they meet up as the Orange look to continue their march from the bottom of the standings into maybe a top 3 spot or even higher. They've done nothing but keep winning, and with Michigan State only a game ahead of them, this could be a massive game for them. For Utah, they nearly had a win over Minnesota. They fell in 5, and they've got to rebound quickly against a very, very strong Syracuse team. Moving on into Overwatch, Boise State Overwatch heads into Week 5 with an important battle against Minnesota. While the Gophers have had a tough spring, they have a chance to maybe play spoiler against Boise State. For the Broncos, the margins, as we've talked about, between that second seed and that third seed is just 3% in the 6th tiebreaker category over Utah. So not only is winning important, you've got to get a sweep whenever you can. Speaking of Utah, they find themselves in a top 4 showdown with Syracuse. The Orange, they have yet to lose to a team not named Ohio State this year, but this will be their first true test of the spring season. For both these teams, a win is very important. They've got to keep up with Boise State, and they've also got to maybe avoid losing as many. You don't want to go 3-2. You want to try 3-0, 3-1 as you keep pace with Boise State, and of course, the top-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. They got a 2-week bye, so they'll look to avoid any rust against Nebraska. The Buckeyes have looked like the best team in the spring season, but they haven't played a game in February. Maybe the Cornhuskers can take advantage of that. They've had some strong rounds against some of the better opponents in the PEC. Could be maybe on the verge of turning the corner and doing that against Ohio State. That could be an absolutely statement win for them. Kansas and Baylor will wrap up our final week of the PEC before we get the 5 new heroes. Remember, they entered the fray on February 24th. Kansas, they just got swept 3-0 at the hands of Boise State. Still have a shot at one of those top spots if the teams above them maybe slip up a little bit. Meanwhile, Baylor, they're coming off a bye. It's the best place to start. You're well rested in the spring season where they've shown improvements, but they've struggled with consistency. This might be a series to get it done. Moving on into Valorant, Ohio State gets their first Valorant action since suffering their first loss of the year a couple weeks ago. They once seemed like an unstoppable force, but it'll be interesting to see how they respond. They lost their top spot in the standings, and now they take on a Nebraska squad who had a really strong series against Syracuse just last week before coming up short. Maybe going to look to pounce on a wounded Ohio State team. Utah, they're going to face off against Syracuse, and while on paper, this might look like on teams on opposite ends of the standings, this series, I think, has the chance to go to the distance. The Orange have looked amazing. Remember, they were maybe the first ones to kind of deal that blow to Ohio State, taking their round off of them a couple weeks ago. For Utah, sweeping the Orange kind of proves they have what it takes to belong with the best of the best. Speaking of the best, Boise State and their league-leading 12 wins take on a Minnesota squad that gave Utah fits last week before ended up falling. And for Boise State, that Ohio State loss kind of reopened a chance at the top seed in Vegas. They can't afford any slip-ups. They need to get these 2-0 sweeps, and we'll see if they can do that against a Gopher squad that, again, had maybe their best series of the year last year, barely missing a chance against Utah to make overtime, extend that series. We'll see what they can do against the top-ranked Broncos. And Kansas and Baylor wrap up the week in PEC Valorant. It's a Big 12 battle between teams just looking for that spark to maybe propel you into the second half of the year. Well, the Jayhawks, they've been sort of that middle ground. They'll beat the teams below them. They won't beat the teams above them. They kind of hope to continue that as they take on a Baylor team that, again, we've talked about it a lot with Baylor. Individually, this team puts up insane numbers. It's just about finding that round, that consistency to get your sort of first signature win. And wrapping the week up, of course, with Smash. Kansas and Baylor going to kick it off with teams hoping to turn around their season. And they're both well rested. Baylor, of course, rescheduling their game against Michigan State. And Kansas actually played Boise State 2 weeks ago. So both these teams coming off of sort of a fake bye have a chance to reset. And this should be a fun series to watch with both squads looking to something to prove. Ohio State, they're going to take on a Nebraska team that's coming off maybe the biggest win of PEC spring as they took down Syracuse and kind of have cemented themselves as a top 2 team in the league. The Cornhuskers, though, they've struggled at times to put teams away. They have easily the most 3-game series in PEC Smash. This could be a chance for Ohio State, as we heard from John, maybe to pick up a season-defining win and change that into some momentum. Boise State, they've maybe been the hottest team in PEC Smash. They have back-to-back wins, and now they get a third-place Minnesota squad with a chance for maybe Boise State to establish themselves as a legit threat. Both these teams also had byes. Minnesota with a legitimate bye. Boise State, they had moved up their game from Kansas to 2 weeks ago, so they also were off last week, so should be kind of fun. Week 5 of the PEC set to have some massive matchups across the board. Let's take a look at them. Again, Boise State, Minnesota in Smash and maybe in Rocket League. That Minnesota Rocket League, look out for them. Should be a lot of fun. Baylor, we know what they could do in Rocket League. They're going to take on a Kansas squad. Both these teams in several titles looking for that spark, that win that pushes them over. Ohio State, Nebraska, I want to see what Ohio State Valorant does. It's their first action since suffering their first loss of the year. And then Syracuse and Utah, Rocket League, Valorant, Overwatch. These squads are going to be a ton of fun to watch in all of those, so it should be an absolute blast. Again, absolutely massive matchups here in the PEC. Week 5 shaping up to be maybe one of the most exciting weeks in the PEC, so make sure you join us. And if you miss any of the action, you can join us next week on PEC Match Point to get caught up from everything that happened around the league. And of course, don't forget, head over to pec.leagueos.gg for everything Power Esports Conference. PEC Match Point brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. Good luck to all the teams, and we'll see you guys all next week.